Hi everyone, I'm Denis Donnelly, class of 2019 from UCLA and 2020 NUS. As Christina said, this program actually gives you two MBAs. I'm Irish, have been living in Singapore for almost 12 years. My background is in the technology industry, progressively moving from technical roles, delivery, support, through to pre-sales, the dark side of sales, as I joke, and then the even darker side of sales leadership. I joined VMware in February of this year, and I lead their security business across all of their Southeast Asia and Korea region. So 19 countries, so not much of a challenge at all, but certainly makes for lots of interesting days. Christina, did you want me to kind of share on my experience with the program? And okay, I'll carry on then. So in terms of my experience, what was it like balancing the EMBA with a full-time job? In one word, challenging. Myself and my wife, we had our second child 5 weeks after I started the program. So while completing the program, was a huge challenge for me. It was also particularly challenging for my wife, particularly when I was on some of the overseas segments. So it's very important to communicate with your family and friends up front what life would be like as you pursue an MBA. Personally, we documented what my average kind of week would look like. So then we kind of worked around that. And on the flip side, it actually gave my wife motivation to go back and pursue a master's degree herself. So she just submitted her thesis last week. So don't underestimate the inspiration that you might be able to provide to some of your other families and friends. So what was, I suppose, my personal motivation for an EMBA and why UCLA-NUS? It was it's kind of a multi-part answer. So I was at a point in my career where I was a very successful individual contributor, but I knew that if I wanted to make more of an impact, it would be probably via a leadership role. And I knew I had some gaps there, particularly around things like just, finance, strategy, leadership, not all of which can be addressed through an MBA. But I was quite fortunate to be promoted into a leadership role about 3 months after I started the program. But kind of between the MBA and the new leadership role, I reckon it accelerated my career by probably 5 to 6 years at least over the course of just a 15-month program. In terms of the MBA, so depending on where you're kind of at in your life, you could choose, I narrowed it down to part-time, full-time, or executive MBA. For me, full-time was out of the question because I wasn't prepared to give up work for 2 years or so. Part-time, I also didn't want to give up my weekends for 2 to 3 years, and I was worried about, remaining committed to a program for so long. So that really left me with an EMBA program. So why NUS UCLA? So it's a relatively short list of kind of strong global EMBA programs. Most of the programs involve significant travel. For some of them, it's all outside of Singapore, but I appreciated the component being based in Singapore. And again, as Christina said, you get not just one, but two MBAs. I felt I had a lot of European experience, obviously growing up in Ireland and having my kind of initial education there. So I felt this program really provided a strong kind of insight into Asia and into the US. So if you're working for an American company in Asia or working in the US, looking for more exposure into Asia, I think this is the perfect kind of bridging program for that. And then just lastly, what have I learned from the program? It's such a huge question, but fundamentally, this program has just completely changed how I think. So I'm now very comfortable putting myself into the shoes of a CEO, CFO, COO. So one of the particular capabilities I believe I've developed as a result is really the ability to formulate a very strong go-to-market strategy. So moving between strategic, operational, and tactical discussions, depending on the internal or external stakeholders that I'm speaking with. And then just very lastly, I'd be remiss not to mention the positive aspects that the program has delivered in my personal life. Classes like macroeconomics, financial accounting, but particularly corporate finance with Prof. Amir Hernjic, who was shared on one of the earlier slides. I had very, very limited insight into these kind of topics before the program, but it really opened my eyes. And as a result, I believe I've become far more comfortable with finance and a much better investor of my personal and family finances. So that's it for me. If anyone who's considering the program wants to reach out, feel free to do so on LinkedIn. Happy to share more on my experience with the program, but I couldn't recommend it enough.